Katie Brooks stood in the corner of the communal courtyard and watched the same scene unfold for the 14th morning in a row. The Galactic Academy Station Harmony floated in orbit around a neutral moon, a place where young beings from across the galaxy came to learn about cooperation and diplomacy. Or at least that was what the brochure said when Katie applied for the exchange program. 6 months ago back on Earth, she was 16 years old, the only human student on a station with 300 aliens from 40 different species. And every morning she witnessed something that made her blood boil hotter than the day before as Zilara entered the courtyard right on schedule. The young Avarian girl moved slowly, her beautiful iridescent wings folded tight against her back, as if she could make herself invisible by becoming smaller. And Katie noticed how those wings trembled. Even from across the courtyard, Avarians looked like a mix between birds and humans, with delicate bones and feathers that shimmered in colors that changed with their emotions. And right now Zilara's feathers showed deep blues and grays that Katie had learned meant fear and sadness. The girl was about 14 years old in human terms, small for her species, and she carried her datapad clutched against her chest like a shield that could never actually protect her. Katie's jaw tightened as three large shapes emerged from the shadow of the East Corridor. The Kreth siblings, Vorn, Calyx, and Dreshthi, were reptilian beings, each one nearly 7 feet tall, with scales that gleamed dark green under the station lights. And their species was known across the galaxy for being aggressive and territorial, traits that the brothers seemed to embrace with enthusiasm. The eldest reached Ilara first. "Good morning, little bird," he said in Galactic Common, a language that every species learned for communication. And his voice carried across the quiet courtyard. Zilara tried to move around him, but Calyx blocked her path from the left while Dresh cut off her escape to the right. Katie's fists clenched at her sides as she watched the familiar pattern begin. "Your wings look so pretty today," Vorn continued, reaching out with one clawed hand to grab the edge of Zilara's right wing. The Avarian girl whimpered, a sound that was barely audible but cut through Katie like a knife pulled, extending the wing forcefully. And Katie could see several small feathers flutter to the ground. "Please," Zilara whispered, her voice cracking with fear and pain. "Please stop," Calyx laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the metal walls. "Why should we stop?" he asked, moving closer. "Your kind are too weak to make us stop, too scared to even try." Dresh reached out and plucked a handful of feathers directly from Zilara's wing, making the girl cry out in pain. Other students passed through the courtyard, beings from a dozen different species, and every single one of them looked away, found something fascinating about their datapads, or suddenly remembered they needed to be somewhere else. Katie had tried to help during her first week on the station. She walked up to the Kreth brothers and told them to leave Zilara alone, using her firmest voice, the one her mother used when she meant business. Vern had looked down at her with amusement in his yellow eyes. "The little human wants to play protector," he said to his brothers. "How cute." They ignored her after that, continuing their torment as if Katie was invisible. She reported the incident to the station security office, waited 2 hours to speak with an officer, and explained everything she witnessed. The Torvan security chief barely looked up from his desk. "We monitor all public areas," he said in a bored tone. "The surveillance shows normal student interaction, nothing that rises to the level of intervention. They're hurting her every day." Katie insisted, her voice rising. "They pull her feathers out, push her down, make her cry." "The Kreth family holds significant political position on the council," the security chief replied, his multiple eyes finally focusing on Katie. "Their sons have diplomatic immunity, and furthermore, young human. You should be careful about making accusations against prominent families when you're new to galactic society." That was a warning. Clear as day. Katie left the security office with her hand shaking, Not from fear, but from rage, she tried the teachers next, approaching 3 different instructors over the following days. Each one gave her a variation of the same response. It was a cultural misunderstanding. Human emotions were making her misinterpret normal behavior. The boys were just being playful. Zilara would speak up if she had a real problem, but Zilara's species were pacifists by nature and culture, genetically predisposed to avoid conflict. And everyone on the station knew that fact. Katie even contacted the human liaison officer, a diplomat named Gregory Collins, who was supposed to help human students adjust to life in galactic society, invited her to his office and listened to her story with patience. "I understand your concern," Collins said when she finished. "You come from Earth, where humans have strong protective instincts, especially toward those who appear vulnerable. They're torturing her," Katie said flatly. "Every single morning, in galactic terms. What you're describing is considered minor conflict," Collins explained, his tone sympathetic but firm. "Humans are still new to the Council, Katie. We've only been members for 30 years, and we're already seen as aggressive and primitive by many species. So I should just watch?" Katie asked, disbelief coloring her voice. "I'm asking you not to make waves," Collins said, leaning forward in his chair. "Don't give them more reasons to question whether humans belong in civilized space." Katie left that meeting feeling more alone than she had since arriving at the station. She spent her evenings researching galactic law, station regulations, council policies. Anything that might give her a legal way to help Zilara Avery path led to a dead end. System was designed to protect those with power and influence, not innocent victims who had no political connections. Katie learned that Zilara's parents had filed formal complaints with the station administration, submitted medical reports showing the damage to their daughter's wings, requested protection or at minimum supervision during the morning courtyard period. Every request was denied or lost in bureaucratic delays. The Kreth family's influence ran deep now. Standing in her corner of the courtyard on her 14th morning of watching this horror, Katie saw something that made her decision for her. Vaughn pulled out a small tool from his belt, something that looked like scissors but designed for cutting through tougher materials. "I think today we should clip your wings properly," he said to Zilara, his voice cheerful like he was discussing the weather. "Make them even on both sides. Wouldn't that look nice?" Zilara's eyes went wide with terror, and she tried to pull away, but Calix grabbed her shoulders and held her still. Dresh laughed and pulled out his datapad to record the moment. Katie felt something break inside her chest. Not her heart, but something harder, something that had been holding her back. She remembered her younger sister Sophie, back on Earth, crying in their shared bedroom after school because 3 girls had cornered her in the locker room and cut her hair with scissors while calling her ugly. Katie had been away at science camp, unable to help, unable to protect. And by the time she got home, the damage was done. Sophie never went back to that school. Their parents moved the whole family to a different district, started over. But Sophie's confidence took years to rebuild. Katie had promised herself she would never stand by helpless again. She stopped researching regulations that night and started researching something else. Human history. She found stories of people who stood up when the law failed the innocent. Individuals who chose what was right over what was legal. Humans who paid terrible prices to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Some became heroes. Some were executed, but all of them changed their societies. Katie also researched Kreth biology, their bone structure, their vulnerable points, the exact locations where their thick scales were thinnest. She learned where to strike for maximum damage with minimum effort. She planned everything with the same careful attention she gave to her science projects back home. And now, watching Vaughn extend those cutting blades towards Ilara's trembling wing, Katie moved. She crossed the courtyard in 6 long strides, faster than most species could react. A benefit of coming from Earth's heavy gravity, her hand shot out and grabbed Vorn's wrist, her fingers finding the exact pressure point she had studied. And she twisted with all the strength in her human muscles. The sound of Vorn's elbow breaking echoed across the courtyard like a gunshot. Sharp and final, his scream followed immediately after. High and piercing, Katie didn't stop. This wasn't about anger anymore. This was about sending a message that would last forever. Calix reacted first among the brothers, releasing Zilara's shoulders and lunging toward Katie with a roar of rage. He was larger and stronger. Advantages that meant nothing when Katie sidestepped his charge and used his own momentum against him. She had studied human martial arts videos for the past week. Ancient fighting techniques from Earth that worked on principles of leverage and timing rather than pure strength. Her elbow caught Calix in the throat as he stumbled past. Not hard enough to kill, but hard enough to make breathing difficult. He crashed to the ground, gasping, while Vorn continued screaming and, clutching his shattered elbow, Dresh hesitated, looking between his injured brothers and the small human girl who stood calmly in fighting stance. Katie met his eyes and saw the moment he made his choice. He charged anyway, perhaps thinking his size would overwhelm her. Perhaps too angry to think clearly, Katie dropped low and swept his legs. Another technique she had practiced in her quarters, using furniture as obstacles. Dresh's knee made a wet popping sound as it bent the wrong direction when he fell. That was intentional. Katie had aimed for that specific joint, knowing from her research that Kreth knees were their weakest structural point. The entire fight had lasted maybe 20 seconds. Katie knew the security drones would arrive in 30 seconds from the moment the first scream echoed. She had timed their response patterns carefully. 10 seconds left. Vern was still screaming, but trying to crawl away. His broken arm hanging uselessly, Katie walked over to him, grabbed his tail, the sensitive appendage that Kreth used for balance, and stomped down hard on the third vertebra. The crack was distinct, and Vorn's scream reached a new pitch. 7 seconds. Calix had recovered enough air to start moving. Pushing himself up on his hands, Katie kicked him in the ribs 3 times, quick and precise. Feeling bones break under her boot. 4 seconds. Resh was crying now, clutching his ruined knee. And Katie stood over him. "You will never forget this day," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "Every time your knee aches, every time you struggle to walk, you will remember what happens when you hurt innocent people." Security drones arrived exactly on schedule. 5 spherical machines that surrounded Katie with weapons charged. "Do not move," one drone announced in mechanical galactic common. Katie raised her hands slowly, showing her palms. She was breathing hard now, feeling the pain from Calix's initial impact, her ribs screaming where his shoulder had connected. But she smiled, and he stood exactly where the brothers had left her, wings still intact, staring at Katie with an expression of shock and disbelief. The courtyard had gone completely silent. Dozens of students frozen in place. One of the drones fired a stunner, blue energy that made Katie's muscles lock up, and she fell to the metal floor without resistance. She had accomplished what she came to do when Katie woke. She was in a detention cell, white walls on all sides, a force field humming across the entrance. Her body hurt everywhere. A medical scan showed she had 2 broken ribs, a fractured hand, internal bleeding from where Calix hit her, and various bruises covering half her torso. She had fought through all of that without slowing down. The door field deactivated, and a Valith medical officer entered, a species that looked like tall insects with multiple arms. "You are aware you were injured during the altercation," the doctor stated, running scanners over Katie's body. "Yes," Katie replied. "You continued fighting despite these injuries," the doctor continued, confusion in its tone. "Most species would have been incapacitated by pain. I had a job to finish." Katie said simply. The doctor applied healing patches to the worst injuries. Though they would take days to fully work, and left without further comment. Next came a psychologist, a Mentari whose entire species was devoted to understanding the minds of other beings. "I am Dr. Salas," the alien said, settling into a chair across from Katie, their form shifting colors and patterns Katie didn't understand. "I am here to evaluate your mental state." "I'm fine," Katie said. "You severely injured 3 students," Dr. Salas said. "This does not indicate a fine mental state. They were torturing Zilara every day," Katie explained, her voice patient. "The system failed to protect her." "So I did. But you knew you would be punished," the psychologist pressed. "Yes, you knew you might die, given the severity of galactic laws." "Yes, yet you acted anyway." "Of course," Katie said, meeting the alien's gaze. "Someone had to." Dr. Salas was quiet for a long moment, colors shifting rapidly. "I do not understand your species," the psychologist finally admitted. "Logically, your action makes no sense. You sacrificed your own well-being for someone unrelated to you, with no benefit to yourself." "That's where you're wrong," Katie said. "There was a benefit. I can sleep at night knowing I did the right thing." The psychologist left looking more confused. The Monday arrived. Katie spent 3 days in the cell before the real news reached her. The Galactic Council had called an emergency session. The Kreth family was demanding her execution. Footage of the fight had spread across every news network in civilized space. Millions of beings watching the 30-second clip of a human girl destroying 3 larger aliens. The debate wasn't just about Katie's punishment anymore. It was about whether humans belonged in galactic society at all. Gregory Collins, the human liaison, visited her on the 4th day. "You've created an interstellar incident," he said, sitting heavily in the visitor's chair. "Earth's council membership is being questioned. There are calls to restrict human travel. Some species are genuinely terrified of what you did." "They should be terrified of what the Kreth brothers did," Katie countered. "They tortured an innocent girl for weeks and no one stopped them." "That's not how the galaxy sees it," Collins said, rubbing his face with both hands. "They see a human who violated every rule of civilized conduct, who chose violence over law. The law protected the bullies," Katie said flatly. "Katie, you're 16 years old," Collins said, his voice tired. "You could be executed for this. Do you understand that the Kreth family has enormous influence?" "I understand," Katie replied. "Would you prefer I had done nothing?" Collins stood and walked to the force field, staring out into the corridor. "No," he finally said, so quietly Katie almost missed it. "No, I wouldn't prefer that. But I wish there had been another way." "There wasn't," Katie said. "I looked for one. I spent 2 weeks searching for a legal solution. The system is designed to protect people with power, not people who need protection." Collins left without responding that night. Katie's cell dimmed for sleep cycle, and she lay on the hard bench thinking about everything that happened. Her hand throbbed where she had broken bones punching calyx. Her ribs made breathing painful, and she knew her life would never be the same. But when she closed her eyes, she didn't see the fight. She saw Zilara's face. That moment of shock when someone finally stood up for her. Katie thought about Sophie, her little sister who never got that protection when she needed it. The regret Katie carried from that failure had been heavy for years. She wouldn't carry another one. The next morning, a guard delivered a message that the Galactic Council wanted to transport her to their central station for trial. Katie would face representatives from 47 species, the most powerful beings in known space. They would decide if she lived or died. She wrote a letter to her parents that night, knowing it might be the last communication they ever received from Hirsch. She told them she loved them, told them not to blame themselves. Explained why she did what she needed to do. He also wrote a letter to Sophie. "You asked me once why I didn't protect you from those girls," Katie wrote. "I was too far away, too late, and I've regretted it every day since. But I promise you this, I will never look away again when someone needs help. No matter the cost, because that's what it means to be human. We protect those who can't protect themselves." The transport arrived on day 7. Katie was escorted to the ship in restraints, flanked by armed guards from 3 different species as they walked through the station corridors toward the docking bay. Students lined the walls to watch her pass. Some looked afraid. Some looked angry, but many looked at her with something else in their eyes. Hope. Maybe, or possibility. The understanding that someone had finally stood up near the end of the corridor. Katie saw a small figure with iridescent wings. Alara stood with her parents. The young Avarian's feathers now showing colors Katie had never seen before. Bright golds and warm oranges. The girl's wings were spread slightly, no longer pressed tight against her back in fear when Katie passed. Zilara stepped forward and placed something in the guard's hand. "Please give this to her," Zilara said. Her voice small but steady. The guard looked at the object, a single perfect feather, and handed it to Katie. Katie closed her fingers around it carefully. "Thank you," Zilara whispered. And those were the first words she had spoken directly to Katie. Katie smiled. "Stay strong," she said. "Don't let anyone break you ever again." Then the guards pulled her toward the ship, and Katie walked forward to face whatever judgment waited at the council station. The council chamber was enormous, a circular room that could hold thousands of beings, with tiered seating rising up in concentric rings around a central platform. Katie stood on that platform in restraints, still wearing the same clothes from a week ago. Her injuries visible through torn fabric. The healing patches had helped, but she still moved stiffly, and her hand was wrapped in medical bandaging. Where bones had fractured, representatives from 47 species filled the chamber. Beings of every shape and size imaginable, and all of them were staring at her. The human delegation consisted of exactly 3 people. Gregory Collins, Ambassador Lisa Park, who led Earth's council mission, and a young lawyer named Ben Hayes, who looked barely older than Katie herself. They sat in a section marked for minor species, those with limited council influence. The Kreth family occupied an entire section of premium seating. At least 30 family members and associates, all wearing formal robes that indicated their political status. The 3 brothers were there too. Vorn's arm in an advanced healing sleeve. Calix with a breathing apparatus still attached to his throat. Dresh in a mobility chair because his knee would never fully heal despite alien medical technology. Their injuries were on display deliberately. Evidence of human savagery. "This hearing will now commence," announced the council speaker. "A Valdris, whose species have led the council for 300 years. We gathered to determine punishment for the human Katie Brooks, who stands accused of assault causing permanent injury, violation of diplomatic immunity, and threatening the peace of council space." Katie noticed the speaker didn't say alleged assault or accused of causing injury. She was already guilty in their eyes. This hearing was just about deciding how she would die. The Kreth family lawyer stood, a Mentari legal expert named Advocate Thren, whose reputation for winning impossible cases was legendary. "Honored council," Thren began, their form shifting through aggressive reds and oranges. "We present evidence of unprecedented violence committed by this human against 3 innocent students." The chamber's main display activated, showing security footage of the fight. Katie watched herself break Vorn's arm, saw the cold efficiency with which she disabled all 3 brothers. The footage played 3 times, each repetition making the violence seem more brutal. Medical reports confirm permanent injury. Thren continued. "Vorn Kreth will never regain full use of his dominant arm. Calix Kreth suffers respiratory damage requiring lifetime treatment. And Dreshkruth's mobility is reduced by 40% despite our best medical intervention. The display showed medical scans, highlighting the damage in detail. The accused demonstrated knowledge of Kreth physiology. Thren said, she specifically targeted weak points. This was not impulsive violence, but calculated assault. Katie didn't deny any of it. Furthermore, the advocate continued, this attack occurred without provocation. The Kreth brothers were merely socializing with a fellow student when the human attacked. That was a lie. But Katie stayed quiet. Her allowor would have a chance to respond. We demand the maximum penalty, Thren concluded. Execution, as a demonstration that violence against council families will not be tolerated. And we further recommend that Earth's council membership be reviewed. If humans cannot control their aggressive instincts, they endanger all civilized beings. The advocate sat down, and the chamber buzzed with conversation. Ambassador Park stood next to speak for the defense. She was a small woman in her 50s. With gray hair and a tired expression, honored counsel, Park began, her voice steady. We do not contest the facts of the incident. Katie Brooks did indeed injure the Kreth brothers, however. We contest the characterization of events. The display changed to show footage from earlier that morning. Before Katie arrived, it showed the Kreth brothers surrounding Zilara, showed them pulling her feathers, showed Vorn's cutting tool. The Kreth brothers were engaged in systematic torture of a younger, weaker student, Park said. This had occurred daily for weeks. Complaints were filed and ignored. The victim's family sought help from station authorities and received none. Irrelevant. Advocate Thren shouted, the Avarian girls' problems do not excuse violence. I'm establishing context, Park replied calmly. Katie Brooks attempted to resolve this situation through legal channels first. The display showed records of Katie's complaints to security, her conversations with teachers, her meeting with the liaison office. Every proper authority refused to help. Park continued. The system failed to protect an innocent child. So Katie took action herself. She chose violence over law. The Kreth lawyer countered. She chose protecting an innocent over following rules that enabled abuse. Park corrected. The council speaker raised a hand for silence. The human's motives are noted, the speaker said. But motives do not change the severity of her actions. Do you have any legal precedent for such behavior being acceptable? Ambassador Park hesitated, and Katie saw the problem clearly. Galactic law assumed all beings would follow authority. There was no precedent for individual moral action overriding the system. We have no precedent in council law, Park admitted. But we asked the council to consider human history and philosophy. The display changed again, showing images from Earth's past. Throughout our history, Park explained, humans have faced moments when law protected the powerful at the expense of the innocent. And in those moments, individuals chose conscience over compliance. Images flowed past, protesters standing against unjust governments, individuals hiding refugees from persecution. Humans throughout history who said no to legal but immoral orders. Some were punished, Park said. Some died for their choices. But all of them changed their societies. They forced systems to evolve, to become more just. You are arguing that individuals should override lawful authority? A council member from the Pelthic delegation asked, clearly disturbed. I'm arguing that law must serve justice, Park replied. If it doesn't, humans will challenge it. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some species horrified. Others intrigued. Katie was asked to speak next, stood as straight as her injured ribs allowed and faced the council. I know you're going to find me guilty, Katie said without preamble. I don't expect anything different, but I want you to understand something about humans before you pass judgment. The chamber went quiet. We're not mindlessly violent. Katie continued. We don't attack without reason, but we have lines that cannot be crossed. And hurting children crosses every line we have. She gestured toward the Kreth brothers. They tortured Zilara every day, Katie said, her voice firm. They damaged her body, terrorized her mind, and planned to permanently cripple her. Your system allowed this because they have political power, and she doesn't. The system has processes. Someone shouted from the council seats. Your processes failed her, Katie shot back. I tried them all. I spent 2 weeks looking for a legal solution while Zilara suffered. And every door closed because the Kreth family is too important to question. So you appointed yourself judge and executioner? Advocate Thren demanded. I appointed myself protector, Katie corrected. Something had to be done, someone had to stand up. If that makes me a criminal in your eyes, then I accept that judgment. The council speaker leaned forward. You show no remorse. I regret that violence was necessary, Katie said. But I don't regret protecting Zilara. I would do it again tomorrow if needed. Gasps echoed through the chamber. You threaten further violence? The speaker asked. I promise further protection, Katie clarified. Anywhere humans encounter innocents being harmed and systems failing to help, we will act. Ambassador Park looked like she wanted to stop Katie from talking. But it was too late. You cannot predict what every human will do. A council member from the Korath delegation said, That's exactly my point, Katie replied. You can build all the rules you want, but if those rules don't protect people who need protection, humans will break them. That's who we are. We protect those who can't protect themselves. And we don't ask permission first. The chamber descended into chaos. Dozens of species talking at once. The council called for a recess to deliberate. Katie was taken back to a holding cell while they decided her fate. Ben Hayes, the young lawyer, visited her during the wait. That was either very brave or very stupid, he said. Probably both, Katie agreed. The council is split, Hayes told her. Someone you executed as an example. Others see you as highlighting systemic problems they've been ignoring. There's a third group that's just terrified of what happens if they punish you too harshly and other humans take offense. What do you think they'll do? Katie asked. Honestly, I have no idea, Hayes admitted. This is unprecedented. While Katie weighed, something unexpected happened. Students from Academy Station Harmony began submitting testimony to the council, dozens of them, from multiple species, describing similar situations where politically powerful students abused weaker ones without consequence. Floodgates open. Parents came forward with stories of children bullied, hurt, tormented, while administrators looked away. Teachers admitted they knew about the problems but were told not to. Intervened. Station security personnel confessed that they received orders to ignore certain incidents involving certain families. The pattern was clear. The system was designed to protect power, not innocence. Katie was escorted back to Academy Station Harmony under guard to collect her belongings before the transport to Earth. The corridors were packed with students who had heard about the verdict. Some looked relieved that she wasn't being executed. Others seemed disappointed that she was leaving. And a few watched with fear still clear in their eyes when Katie reached her quarters. She found her small room already packed by station staff. Everything she owned fit into 2 bags. Not much to show for 6 months away from home. A knock on the door made her turn. Orange Alara stood in the doorway with her parents. The young Avarian's wings fully extended, no longer trembling or pressed tight with fear. We wanted to say goodbye, Zilara's mother said, her voice gentle. And thank you for what you did for our daughter. You saved her life, Zilara's father added. The medical report showed that if the brothers had clipped her wings as they planned, she would never have flown again. For an Avarian, that is a fate worse than death. Katie set down the bag she was holding. I'm sorry, I couldn't stop them sooner, she said. You stopped them when no one else would, Zilara replied. Stepping forward, you tried the right way first. You followed all the rules, and when the rules failed me, you didn't. The young Avarian pulled something from a small pouch at her side. A carefully wrapped bundle. This is for you, Zilara said. Holding it out, Katie unwrapped it carefully and found a wing feather. But not just any feather. This one was large and perfect, gleaming with colors that shifted from gold to silver to deep blue. In our culture, Zilara's mother explained, we give our flight feathers only to those who have given us freedom. It is the highest honor we can bestow. Katie felt tears burning in her eyes for the first time since this whole situation began. Thank you. She managed to say. Zilara hugged her, careful of Katie's still healing ribs, and whispered something in her ear. I'm going to become a diplomat, the young Avarian said. I'm going to work to change the council's laws so what happened to me can't happen to others. And when I do, I'll tell them that a human girl showed me that courage isn't about being the strongest. It's about standing up even when you're scared. Katie held the feather carefully as Zilara and her parents left. The next visitor was Gregory Collins, the liaison officer. I wanted to apologize, he said without preamble. I told you not to make waves, to think about Earth's reputation. And I was wrong. Katie looked at him in surprise. I put politics ahead of doing the right thing, Collins continued. You're 16 years old, and you understood something I forgot. Some things are more important than diplomacy. You were trying to protect Earth, Katie said. I was trying to protect my career. Collins corrected. There's a difference. And I'm sorry I didn't help when you needed it. He handed her a datapad. This contains messages from Earth, he said. Hundreds of them. Your story spread through every human colony and settlement. You should read them when you're ready. Katie took the datapad but didn't turn it on yet. Collins left. And Katie was alone with her thoughts for the first time in days. The transport would depart in 6 hours. She had time to read some of the messages. The first several were from her parents. Love and support mixed with worry about her injuries and fear. About the trial, her mother wrote, I'm proud of you for standing up for what's right, even when it cost you everything. Her father added, You're braver than I ever was at your age. Then came messages from Sophie, her younger sister. I saw what you did on the news, Sophie wrote. Everyone did. And I want you to know that I finally told Mom and Dad what really happened to me at school, about the girls who cut my hair. And we're pressing charges now? I was always too scared before. But watching you stand up for Zilara made me realize I needed to stand up for myself too. Katie had to stop reading for a moment. More messages scrolled past. Students from human schools saying they reported bullies for the first time. Parents thanking her for showing their children that standing up matters. Teachers admitting they would pay more attention to vulnerable students. There were negative messages too. People calling her violent and dangerous, claiming she made humans look bad. Arguing that she should have found another way. Katie accepted both kinds of criticism. Not everyone would understand her choice. And that was okay. The transport arrived right on schedule. Katie boarded with her 2 bags and Zilara's feather wrapped carefully in protective cloth. The ship was a commercial vessel that made regular runs between council, space, and human colonies. And the crew treated her with a mixture of respect and caution. The journey to Earth would take 2 weeks for the first few days. Katie stayed in our small cabin, watching the stars pass by through the viewport and thinking about everything that happened. Her body was healing slowly, the advanced alien medicine doing its work. But she knew the scars would remain on the 5th day. The ship made a scheduled stop at a human colony station called New Providence. Katie was granted 4 hours of shore leave under guard supervision. She walked through the station's commercial district. Trying to feel normal again, a group of people approached her in the main plaza. 3 adults with children ranging in age from about 8 to 15. Excuse me, one of the adults said. A woman with kind eyes. Are you Katie Brooks? Katie tensed, unsure if this would be a confrontation. Yes, She admitted, "My daughter attends a galactic school on Mars," the woman said. "She's been bullied by older students for months. We filed complaints and got nowhere, but after seeing what you did," she finally told us the full extent of what was happening. The woman's daughter, a girl of about 30, stepped forward. "Thank you for showing me that someone will stand up," the girl said. "I reported everything to the school board yesterday, and this time my parents are demanding action." The other adults nodded. "Our kids go to different schools," one of the fathers explained, "but they all face similar problems, and we wanted to thank you for bringing attention to something that's been happening quietly for too long." They offered Katie a position teaching self-defense to human students at galactic schools. She declined gently, explaining she needed time to figure out her own path first, but the encounter stayed with her for the rest of the journey on day 9. Katie received a message from an unexpected source. Ambassador Park sent a detailed report about changes already happening across Council. Space Academy Station Harmony's director had resigned. 3 security officers were fired, and new protection policies were being implemented. Other educational stations were conducting their own reviews. The Council had formed a committee to examine diplomatic immunity policies. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. "Your actions created ripples," Park wrote in her personal note. "Some council members are angry, some are frightened, but many are realizing that their systems needed challenging, whether you intended it or not. You've become a symbol of human values, protecting the innocent, standing up to injustice, choosing what's right over what's comfortable." Katie saved that message. The ship entered Earth's solar system on day 13. Katie stood at the viewport and watched her homeworld grow larger. She had left Earth 6 months ago as an excited student ready to explore the galaxy. She was returning as an exile with a criminal record and a reputation that would follow her everywhere, but she was also returning as someone who knew exactly who she was and what she stood for. Transport docked at Luna Station first, where Katie would transfer to a shuttle bound for Earth's surface. News reporters filled the arrival terminal. Cameras and recording devices everywhere. Security had to clear a path for Katie to walk through. Questions came from every direction, shouted over each other. "Katie, do you regret your actions? Are you angry about the exile? What message do you have for other human students? Will you appeal the Council's decision?" Katie ignored them all until one question cut through the noise. "Would you do it again?" She stopped walking and looked at the reporter who asked. A young man holding a microphone. Katie thought about Zilara's smile, about Sophie finding courage, about students across the galaxy speaking up for the first time. "Always," Katie said. Just that one word. And then she continued walking. The reporters erupted with follow-up questions. But Katie was done talking. She boarded the Earth shuttle and watched Luna Station shrink behind her. An hour later, the shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere. Katie pressed her face against the viewport and watched clouds part to reveal green forests and blue oceans home. The shuttle landed at a private terminal to avoid the media circus, and Katie's parents were waiting. Her mother ran across the tarmac the moment Katie appeared in the doorway, pulling her into a hug that made Katie's ribs ache, but she didn't care. "My brave girl," her mother whispered. "My brave girl." Her father joined them. And Sophie too. The whole family together again. Sophie looked different, standing taller, more confident than Katie remembered. "I watched every minute of your trial," Sophie said. "You were amazing. I just did what needed doing," Katie replied. "Exactly," Sophie agreed. "That's what makes it amazing." They drove home to their house in the mountains, the same place Katie had grown up. Everything looked exactly the same, but Katie felt completely different. That night, sitting on her childhood bed, Katie pulled out Zilara's feather and held it up to the light. It gleamed with impossible colors, a reminder that some things were worth any price. 6 months passed like water flowing downhill. Steady and inevitable Katie lived quietly in her family's mountain home, working part-time at the local school teaching physical education to elementary students who thought she was the coolest person in the world. Every evening she spent 2 hours reading reports from across the galaxy. The Council's Student Protection Committee sent her updates weekly, and the changes were remarkable. Academy Station Harmony had transformed completely under new leadership, with strict anti-bullying policies and independent monitors who had authority to investigate complaints without political interference. The Kreth brothers never returned to school. S. arm had healed poorly despite advanced medical care, leaving him with limited mobility and constant pain. Calyx required breathing treatments 3 times daily for the rest of his life. Dresh walked with a permanent limp. His athletic career ended before it began. Their father lost his council seat in the next election cycle. Voters, uncomfortable with a family that raised children who tortured the innocent political power built over generations, crumbled in months. Katie felt no satisfaction from their suffering, but no guilt either. They had made their choices, and consequences followed. Zilla sent letters regularly, updating Katie on her progress. The young Avarian had transferred to a prestigious school on her homeworld and was excelling in diplomatic studies. Her wings had healed completely. Stronger than before. I fly every day now, one letter read. Sometimes I fly for hours just because I can. And every time I spread my wings I think about you, about how you gave me back my freedom. Another letter describes Zilara's first speech to her school's student council. I told them what happened at Academy Station. Zilara wrote, I showed them my damaged feathers that I kept as a reminder, and I explained how one human girl changed everything. Now our school has the strongest protection policies in the sector. Katie saved every letter in a box under her bed. Galactic Council continued debating what to do about humans. Some species proposed restrictions on human travel, arguing that a species so willing to use violence needed containment. Others argued that human protective instincts could be valuable if properly channeled. Earth's ambassador worked tirelessly to maintain humanity's council membership. The situation remained tense but stable then. 4 months after Katie returned home, a formal delegation arrived at her door. 3 council representatives, including a senior member from the Veilith species, who had asked the crucial question during her trial. Miss Brooks, the Veilith counselor said. Her name was Taurus. We have a proposal for you. They sat in Katie's living room, an absurd scene of galactic diplomacy happening in a modest mountain house. The Student Protection Committee has implemented new policies across 40 educational stations, Taurus explained. But policies are meaningless without enforcement, and we lack personnel who understand the concept of protecting individuals over institutions. Katie listened carefully. We want to create a new position, Taurus continued. Galactic Advocate for Student Protection, with independent authority to investigate complaints, override local administrators, and ensure vulnerable students receive help. You want me to police the schools, Katie said. We want you to protect the students, Taurus corrected. Exactly as you did for Zilara, but within a legal framework this time. Katie considered this. What authority would I have? She asked. Direct reporting to the council, Taurus replied. Immunity from local jurisdiction. Power to remove students from dangerous situations, and most importantly, the right to act immediately when you determine intervention is necessary. So I'd be doing legally what I did illegally before, Katie said. Essentially. Yes, Taurus agreed. We learned that waiting for perfect evidence and formal procedures allows abuse to continue. Sometimes immediate action is necessary, and humans seem uniquely suited to taking such action. Katie thought about sitting safely on Earth while other children suffered across the galaxy. She thought about Zilara trembling in the courtyard, about all the students who submitted testimony after her trial, about the messages from human children who finally spoke up after watching her stand. I have conditions. Katie said the negotiations took 3 days. Katie demanded complete independence. No political oversight that can interfere with protecting students. She insisted on the right to recruit her own team, preferably other humans who understood the concept of choosing conscience over compliance. She required guaranteed protection for any students she helped. No retaliation from powerful families. The council agreed to everything. 2 weeks later, Katie boarded a transport bound for Council Spacer. Parents cried but supported her decision. Sophie hugged her tightly. "Go protect them," her sister whispered. All of them. Katie arrived at her new office on Council Central Station, a small facility with staff quarters and communication equipment within. She received her first assignment. A mining colony called Gamma 7 reported problems at their school. Complaints from parents being ignored by local administrators. A pattern that sounded distressingly familiar. Katie reviewed the case files during the 3-day journey to Gamma 7. A young being from the Scylla species, a child named Mora, was being systematically excluded and mocked by older students from the dominant species on the colony. The bullies hadn't gotten physical yet, but the psychological damage was clear in the reports. Local officials claimed it was just normal social dynamics among young beings. Katie recognized that excuse immediately. She arrived at Gamma 7 unannounced, walked directly into the school administrator's office. The administrator, a Corvin named Director Belf, looked up in surprise. "Can I help you?" Belf asked. "I'm Katie Brooks," she said simply, "Galactic Advocate for Student Protection." The color drained from Belf's face. Katie's reputation had spread faster than any official announcement. "I'm here to investigate complaints about student Mora," Katie continued, sitting down without being invited. "That situation is under control," Belf said quickly. "Too quickly. Then you won't mind me verifying that personally," Katie replied. Within 2 hours she had interviewed Mora, reviewed security footage, spoken with teachers, and confirmed that the situation was absolutely not under control. The bullying was systematic, organized, and ignored by staff who didn't want to upset the influential families involved. Katie called a meeting with all parties: Mora's parents, the bullies' parents, school staff, and local colony leadership. She laid out everything she had found, her evidence clear and damning. "This ends today," Katie said, a voice carrying the weight of someone who had already proven she meant what she said. "Mora will receive full protection. The students responsible will face consequences, and this school will implement proper monitoring." One of the bullies' fathers stood up angrily. "You have no authority here," he declared. "This is a local matter." Katie pulled out her credentials. Official council authorization with more power than local officials could override. "I have exactly the authority I need," she said calmly. "And if you interfere with my investigation, I will report you to the council for obstruction." The father sat down. The bullying stopped that day. Katie stayed on Gamma 7 for a week, ensuring the changes stuck, training staff on proper intervention procedures. When she left, Mora's mother thanked her with tears in her eyes. "You're the first official who actually cared about my child," the mother said. Katie visited 6 more schools over the next 3 months. Her reputation preceded her arrival every time. Some administrators tried to clean up problems before she arrived, which was fine. Katie's goal was protecting students, not punishing officials. Others attempted to hide evidence or intimidate her, which never worked. Katie had faced down the Galactic Council itself. Local bureaucrats held no fear for her on her 7th assignment. Katie arrived at a station school to find the situation already resolved. The principal had heard she was coming and immediately addressed every complaint with urgency. "We didn't want to be the next academy." Station harmony, the principal admitted. Katie realized her mere existence was preventing abuse. The threat of her intervention made officials take complaints seriously. One evening, Katie received a message from an unexpected source, Gregory Collins, now promoted to Senior Ambassador for Human Affairs. "You've become something remarkable," Collins wrote, "not just a protector but a symbol. Schools across Council Space are reforming their policies not because of regulations, but because they fear you showing up. You've made protecting students more important than protecting political relationships." Katie appreciated the message, but wasn't interested in being a symbol. She was interested in making sure no child suffered, like Zilara had 4 months into her new role. Katie was invited to return to Academy Station Harmony for a ceremony she almost declined. Uncomfortable with formal recognition, but Zilara had sent a personal request. So Katie agreed. The station looked different when she arrived. New security protocols were visible everywhere. Monitors wearing badges that identified them as student advocates, and display screens showing the student protection hotline that connected directly to Katie's office. The ceremony was held in the same courtyard where she had broken the Kreth brothers. Hundreds of students attended, representing dozens of species. Katie stood on a small stage and looked at the crowd. Many of these students had been there that morning 6 months ago, had